For right now, I want to get the thoughts of the Chief Economist at Citadel Investment Services, Maarten Ackerman. He joins us now on the line to share some of his budget reflections. Good evening, Mr. Ackerman. Thanks so much for taking the time. Very kind of muted budget, some would say. What are your initial thoughts and reflections on the budget?
Yes, I think a little bit of cold water after all the optimism earlier this year when the Government of National Unity was announced. But also maybe the right move not to take that optimism right into the budget, because that will give us a false picture. So I think the minister was very prudent to actually say, well, the reality is that we can be very positive on developments we've seen so far. If you just think about where the rand is versus where it was before the election. But on the ground, that's not what we're seeing in the real economy. So, adjusting the current growth numbers even lower and not seeing very much higher growth for the next 3 years is a sad picture, but that is the reality. So I think from a prudent, honest, transparent budget, that's what we've got. And I think everybody, including the Government of National Unity, realize that it's still a lot of hard work ahead of us to actually turn the economy around. And it's not just having a new government that's going to achieve that.
Maarten, how do we turn the economy around?
I think, he did address a lot of the growth initiatives where we can actually get growth going, addressing some of the plans in terms of tackling the structural issues. Bottom line, the economy at this point in time, we keep a lid on the economy given some of these issues. We know them, they're well debated. We're making some progress with Eskom, but there's many others. You can add to the list now the ports, Transnet, the water issue that's building as we speak. And from experience with Eskom, we realize that, you don't turn these things around overnight. So if you take the right policy and implement it today, you're probably only going to see those results a couple of years down the line. But that is really what we need to do. We need to remove the hurdles that's keeping us from growing and focus on those that can actually make South Africa in an export market more competitive.
Maarten, when we look at our historical performance as a country, whether it's midterm, whether it's main budget, just the overall performance, a lot has been said around the ability of South Africa to develop policy is sound, it's good, but where we fall short seems to be implementation. How do we get that right, understanding that there's a new 7th administration, there's a new potential for collaboration? I mean, the minister did stress public and private collaborations and privatization of certain things or private collaborators in certain projects. How do we get implementation right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, if you look at our policy, then 95% of that's rock solid from an economic fundamental point of view. Over the last couple of years, it is the lack of implementation. Our president and the Minister of Finance earlier this year said, well, part of the issue is that things don't happen efficiently on, call it, municipal level. So it's one thing for them to table the budget, make sure that there's enough funding and have the policy plans. But when it gets down to sub-department levels and then onto the municipality levels, that's where things really don't get implemented. Now, again, how do we get that right? I think that is where part of the positive sentiment will probably still continue to say, well, hopefully this new Government of National Unity with some other parties in the mix and just people cross-checking each other can actually assist in taking more responsibility for that implementation. Because in the end, it is about accountability to actually implement that and make sure that we get the results that they are predicting in the budget.
It's about accountability, it's about getting the right things done and about moving the ship forward. We'll leave it at that, Maarten. Thank you so much for the time and for the insights. Maarten Ackerman, Chief Economist at Citadel Investment Services, sharing his thoughts on the midterm budget policy statement that was tabled earlier today.
SAfm Market Update.